Welcome to our Lunch and Learn on citation verification. So today we're going to be discussing a little bit about DOIs in the citation process. This is really important because we're talking about a DOI-based citation verification tool, so it's important to have a bit of context there. We'll touch on research integrity, we'll talk a bit about falsification, hallucinations as well, and then we'll get into a demo and discuss some workflows for citation checking. So this is, I think, what most of us are familiar with looking at when we think of a DOI. The actual DOI itself is made up of a prefix and a suffix. The prefix is specific to the assigning body, so generally this would be either the publisher or the journal. The suffix is specific to the individual resource, so say for this journal, the prefix for every single DOI will be the same, and the suffix will be specific to the article. The proxy doi.org is not part of the DOI itself, but it helps make this into a clickable link, a persistent URL. So this is often how we share DOIs on the internet. And this is how DOIs are registered. So DOIs are registered by a publisher when an article is published. So what that publisher does is they kind of bundle up a bunch of metadata associated with the article and the journal that's publishing the article, and they pass it off to a registration agency. So at the U of A, we use OJS, and so we have a plugin that does this for us. Every time a journal publishes an article, all of this metadata in the citation above is passed off to our registration agency, which is Crossref. Crossref then takes that information and assigns a DOI to that article and passes it back, puts it on the landing page for the article, and then that DOI helps with findability. It gets passed off through indexing services, and it's also used in citations. So this is a snapshot of what happens when citations go wrong. So inaccurate citations have always been a research integrity issue. They've existed for a long time. It ranges from anything including omitting an author's name accidentally from a citation, getting the year wrong, small inaccuracies like that, to things like a completely falsified citation. So falsified citations are what come up when there's no original that you're trying to cite. So it's a citation without an original. So it's not just inaccurate, it's completely made up. And hallucinated citations are a subset of these. So hallucinations are specific to LLMs. They are what happens when an LLM gives some information and then it gives a citation that is completely made up, that purportedly that information came from. So there's no original source there. Hallucinations are kind of set apart by the fact that they often appear to be very legitimate. They're very plausible. That's because of how LLMs parse information. So here's an example of a hallucinated citation in the top here. This is a hallucinated citation that is in a published article on the internet. It's purportedly citing one of the journals that we publish at the U of A, which is the Canadian Journal of Learning and Technology. And just looking at this citation, it looks like it could be real, right? It's got a topic that's pretty similar to what the journal publishes. It's formatted correctly, but this article doesn't exist at all. And how the LLM creates a citation that looks so plausible is essentially by taking bits and pieces that are real and on the journal's website and mashing them together into this kind of Frankenstein hallucinated citation. So we can see here that two of the authors here, Kay and Tang, have previously published in the journal. So here, below here, are all images taken from the website of the journal itself. We can see the issue is volume 46, number 1 from 2020. That's a legitimate issue that the journal published. Topics like privacy and educational technology have been published by the journal before, and the DOI follows the pattern of DOIs that the journal actually publishes. But the thing is, if you click on this DOI in the hallucinated citation, it will take you to a DOI not found page. And that's because LLMs can't create DOIs, they can't register them, they can't edit existing DOIs. So in hallucinated citations, what you'll find is either a fabricated DOI like this, where if you press it, it takes you to an error page, or the DOI, an existing DOI that corresponds to a different article. So you click the DOI and it takes you to a different article than what you were expecting. And it's really important to know that both these cases exist because they're both things that we can check for when we do citation verification. Some more context about hallucinations. They're common to all LLMs, so this is as of 2026. Every LLM produces hallucinated citations at different rates, but they all exist. There has been an 81% increase in papers with invalid citations in 2025, so this is inaccurate citations is an issue that's become really common, and there isn't really a way in the existing peer review process to check for this. Most reviewers aren't thoroughly checking references, and they generally don't think that peer review is the best tool to catch citation errors. And so what results from that is instances like this article retraction here. So this is a journal that had to retract an article that they published because post-publication, they identified a hallucinated citation, and it was actually a hallucinated citation to their own journal. And because of that, this retraction has now become part of their scholarly record, and that's really a negative to the reputation of these authors, but also the journal. So when we think about citation verification, there are kind of a few questions that we want to ask. The first is, does the cited resource exist? So is it a real thing that's out there that this person is trying to reference? We also want to consider, is the citation accurate? So even if the resource exists, is this citation done the best way possible? And the third thing is the cited information correct? And so we're going to be talking a bit about an automated citation verification tool. And just to be very clear, this is a tool that can address really the first two of these questions. Does the resource exist, and is the citation accurate? We're not going to be looking at whether the author has correctly and judiciously used the information in the source that they're citing, because that's really more of a question for a peer review process. We're just going to be looking at the text of the citation itself and asking whether it's accurate. So this is kind of a snapshot of how citation verification software generally works. This is true of pretty much all software that's out there for citation verification. So there are existing commercial software that does citation verification. This is also accurate for the tool that we're going to show you, which is something free that we developed in-house. So this is the graphic that I had on the earlier slide. This is how DOIs are registered. And what's important here is that the registration agency has all of the metadata from the publisher and the DOI that's been created. So we're going to pull that information from the registration agency, and then we're going to compare it to the citation in the paper that we're checking. And we're going to ask, do they match? And this is something that pretty much every citation verification tool does. This is kind of the core step. But what sort of sets different citation verification services apart is what they do after they do this comparison. So oftentimes, the user will want to compare the information, the correct information, to what's been given in the paper. Maybe there will be a different score between, say, that measures how similar the paper citation is and the information from the registration agency is. Some commercial software also has an AI that will suggest fixes, possible fixes. That's not something that we're going to talk about in relation to our tool that we've developed, but it does exist in other tools that are out there on the internet that you can pay for. So this is going to be our workflow for DOI-based citation verification. The first thing the tool is going to do is check whether the DOI exists. So that's as simple as checking, does it resolve? So does it lead to an error page, or does it lead to something else? If it leads to an error page, that's the end of our citation checking, because we're going to flag that as incorrect. If it does resolve, we're going to then check whether the citation matches the article. So the tool is going to pull that information from the registration agency so we can visually compare what's been cited in the paper that we've been given and what information does the registration agency have that they've been given by the publisher. And if the citation matches the actual article, that's probably a legitimate citation. We can move forward without flagging that. If they almost match, we might want to check and see if there are any inaccuracies. And if they don't match at all, if it's a completely different article, we're definitely going to want to look into that a bit more. So this is what the tool that we're going to use looks like. It's a Google Sheet, and we've got a first column here. This is where the user is going to paste the list of citations that they want to check. And then the 4 columns here are all pre-populated with formulas that are going to automatically update when you enter in your paper citations. So this one here is going to isolate the DOI from the citation if it exists. This column here is going to show you whether the DOI resolves, so whether it leads to an error page or something else. This column here is going to show you what information the registration agency has, so what's the correct citation. And then this column here is a difference score. So if it's low, that means that the 2 citations are very similar. If it's high, it means that they're very different. So I'm now going to do a quick live demo of our citation checker. All right, so this is what our citation verification tool looks like before we put anything in it. And as a user, the only column that you have to fill out is the paper citation column. So I've got a test submission here, and say I want to check the works cited list for this submission to see how accurate it is. I can just copy and paste it into the tool. Copy and paste it into there. All right, and now I can see, so I've pasted my list of citations in. This is just the list that I took straight from this paper and pasted into here, and now all the columns have updated. So I can see my first citation, it's isolated the DOI there. It says that the DOI does resolve, and then there's the correct citation. And I can see since the difference score is 1, these are pretty similar, so this is probably a valid citation. This one here, the difference score is 74, so I'm going to take a closer look. I can see that the year there is different, the title is slightly different, the issue is slightly different. So even though this citation does seem to correspond to this article, I would want to take a closer look at that and probably advise the author to revise the citation here. This DOI in this article, we can see it doesn't work, so that would be an issue as well. This is a book, so it doesn't have a DOI, so the tool is going to say no DOI found, and that just means that that's not something that's within the scope of this tool that this tool can check. We've got another one with a very low difference score. That means this is probably good. This one has a very high difference score, and just visually I can see that this citation here is citing a completely different article than the information that the registration agency has provided. So that's something I would really want to look into as well. So this is just kind of a snapshot of the scenarios that can come up when you use this tool. And really this tool is very simple to use. You just copy and paste your citations in. If you'd like to have multiple of these pages, you can always copy the page, or you can copy the whole sheet as well. This is generally a tool with very low configuration. We'll talk later about the possibility of setting up tools, of setting up these sheets for our journals at the U of A specifically. But to configure this, you can change the citation format You can also change the language, so if you'd like citations in a language other than English. And if you'd like a summary of any information, instructions on how to use the tool, the documentation is linked right in the sheet itself. So this documentation has a quick how to use, some notes and information, some configuration information, and then acknowledgements. And it also links to the GitHub. So this is where I keep the most updated version of the tool. You don't have to ever go to the GitHub if you're not, if you don't have an account or if you're just not comfortable using GitHub. But if you would like to see the scripts themselves or download the most recent version, you can do that here. You can also submit an issue as a user. So if there's an update you'd like to see or if there's a problem you have, you can submit it on GitHub. You're also welcome to email it. The advantage of GitHub is that you can then, it then becomes public information, so anyone can see what's kind of in the queue for me to work on and the progress that I've been making on it as well. All right, so that kind of brings the formal part of our presentation to a close. If you have any questions, I would like to hear them.